I think we have way too many coaches out there with too high of an ego to allow for that individualism to happen. And that's a story right there of that exactly thing happen and him driving you out the sport, which is unbelievable. And it should never happen. That should never happen.
Hello and welcome back to Unleashing the Baseball Mindset. Today's episode is about something every player, parents, and coaches also seem to deal with. It's really, the difference between developing a baseball player and shaping a baseball identity. So today we have Cory Reynolds, and like a lot of people we've had on the podcast, Cory's journey has not been a straight line. There are a lot of ups and downs, based on reading the bio. So learning a lot about attitude, effort, focus, and that's really what we're going to talk a lot about today. So Cory, without further ado, would you mind giving us a quick rundown on your background?
Sure. I'll try to keep it brief. First, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's exciting to talk to guys that think the same way that I do and love the game as much as I do. Well, starting out as a kid, as soon as I could pick up a bat, a ball, that's what I wanted to do all the time. I had a little brother who made that easy for me once he got a little bit older, right? And we just played baseball nonstop. I loved it. I would do it 24/7. So I started playing league. My league was kind of just like local city league. I grew up in a smaller town, sort of adjacent, but within Tulsa. And I think as a kid, I kind of stood out. I was pretty well-rounded, pretty good player. And by the time I kind of got into those early teenage years, it was time to go do something a little bit more competitive. So there was not the travel ball that we know today, not the tournament ball that didn't exist, at least in my area when I was a kid. So it was Tulsa All-Star League is what they called it. Not Little League affiliated when you think of All-Star that way, but it was just, hey, the best players from around the Metroplex, you go and you try out and they place you on a team and then you play competitive ball that way. So I made a team out there. I played a couple years and then went on to high school ball. As a freshman, I was immediately brought up to varsity. Then when the season started, they kind of sent me back down. And so I played there amongst football coaches that were looking for a spring job, was basically who coached the junior varsity stuff. And then, later in high school, I was brought up to varsity and I earned the starting shortstop spot, which was great. So my high school coach was not, we didn't align very well. And that ended up costing me some of the passion that I had. There was, not clear expectations, really misaligned sort of consequences, if you will. And I'll give an example. Like one game, I batted in a 2-hole. The leadoff and myself struck out looking, those hated local umpires, right? That's like, that was a ball. Well, we all learned when to swing at strike 3 and when to not. But he put us both on the bench after that at bat. And it was like, well, how much sense does that really make? There's times, that I had where it was like, this is an obvious situation to bunt. I didn't get a bunt sign, but I knew how to play ball. And so I put the bunt down, executed it well. And it was like, I didn't tell you to bunt, go sit on the bench. It's like, this is not how I grew up playing baseball. This is not the game I love. I was taught to think. I was taught to, operate under my instincts and the IQ that I had built playing the game, watching the game, just loving that game. And so it kind of made me not like it, right? We're not robots. Baseball players are not robots. We're smart players. We're focused players. We're physical players. And that's not how we played there. And so I really kind of lost what I had spent, my whole childhood loving this game. I kind of lost that love for it. And it was kind of like, man, when high school ball's over, I couldn't wait to not play anymore and not watch and not be involved in it. So I went on to college and, I started getting, over time, I think getting a little separation from it. I started feeling that passion, that spark again. And I said, man, I gotta figure out a way to play. I wasn't going to play at Oklahoma State, and I wasn't going to move colleges. So it's like, I got to figure out a way to play. And I can't even remember how I made the connection, but I made a connection with a guy in Tulsa, and I was driving to Tulsa 2 nights a week from Stillwater to go play basically men's league ball, right? And a lot of the guys were on the team. The guy that ran the team coached for a high school there. Great guy. He's fantastic. He runs a group called World Baseball Outreach now. He was just starting to grow that when I was playing for him. And this group is like a ministry, and they go out to the Dominican Republic, and they used to take used baseball equipment down there and give it to the kids. And now it's now it's grown so much. I think they take all new stuff and they do it at least once a year. And so it's fantastic. He was just a great person. So maybe like the coach I kind of always wanted, right, through high school. And I played with him and man, I just started really loving it again. So fast forward, I graduate. I'm like, I got to keep playing. Right. I'm moving to Dallas, period, for work. I got to keep playing. I'm going to figure this out. And so, I moved after I graduated. So it's like June. The season started in March. They're kind of like, yeah, maybe somebody needs a player. Let's find somebody. And so they put me in touch with one of the guys who was running the team. And he said, I really only need a catcher. Are you a catcher? And I was like, man, I'm a baseball player. And so my answer is like, yes, I'm a catcher. And I hadn't taught since I was like 9 or 10 years old, right? And I was like, I'm gonna do like I can do it. I know I can do it. I'll say like, and this will kind of get into, maybe how I am where I am now as a coach and what I think my identity and my strengths are as a coach. But I could always play defense. Like defense was never I was a good hitter, but defense was never a problem. I mean, like I said, I was shortstop growing up. Like that's usually where your strength is on defense a lot of times, that catcher center field. And so I wasn't worried about it. And I was like, I can work, I can study. I played enough of this game where I can do it. And so yeah, I definitely made some mistakes like blocking. I could pick it almost any ball that came to me, right? But blocking, like I had to figure that out. I had to go learn. I had to take some bruises, right? But I figured it out. Blocking was never my strength, even though I kept doing it. But I got better at it, right? I could throw guys out, and I could call a good game. That's where where I was talking earlier about my high school days. It's like I have a brain for this. I have the IQ for this. I have the baseball part of this. Like I used to pitch a little bit too, so it's like, and I know hitting, so I can call a game, and so this is kind of my strength. I jumped around a few teams. I'd be on a few years. I'd take a year or two off or whatever, and then right right as Rhett was kind of my son was was born. I was like a little time off, and then I started playing again. So he was coming to watch me play. Um, and he was kind of the type where it's like when he was 1.5 years old and he picked up the bat and the Fisher Price set, it's like that's all he wanted to do. And it was like, okay, that's too easy now. Now make it harder. And it was so funny because I felt like that was my identity as a kid too, and still is to some extent. It's like if this is not challenging me, I'm not interested in it. One of the reasons I probably love baseball is because you're never going to perfect it, any of it, right? You can get really good at it, as we watch, a Major League Baseball players, the best in the world, and the cliche, they're still failing 7 times out of 10, whatever, right? Yeah, I mean it's the truth though, because it's you can never be perfect at it, and so as he kind of started, really loving the game, and I felt I was already kind of had my mojo back, so to speak, as far as how much I loved it and was back into it. And I was like, I'm coaching him, like 100% I'm coaching him. And he was probably a little young to start at 3. And so it's like, dad there is going to help. And I was really fortunate to get placed around some great people coming up through that, that coached alongside me. I'm still friends with these guys today. Our kids don't play together anymore, but I mean, we keep up with each other. We still go to birthday parties and still good friends. So continuing on, I think I said in my bio, I coached him all the way through on my team, all the way through like 10U, which he was a 9U player, but he was still playing up. And then it was like he kind of had that itch, like I need more than this. My theory as the head coach of that team was like I told you guys in the write up, like I'm not cutting unless there's a huge culture issue, like with a family, or if it's going to be an issue with a kid that just flat out doesn't care or has a bad attitude, is going to be a problem in the dugout. But there was a talent gap, right? And he was kind of at the point where like I don't want to do that anymore. And I said, well, that's not who this team is. If you want to do that, there's teams out there and I support it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not who this team is. So let's go figure out if we can find that. And that's when, we came over and joined the team that Scott was a part of. And I sat in stands for that spring, which was, really refreshing in some ways. And then kind of challenging in others. Part of you wants to like still coach them from the stands. But I remember as being a coach, like, don't do that. You hate when people do that. So don't do that. Right. So I kind of waited. And after the spring, I said, I called the coach. I said, I think I can help. And I think where the weakness on this team is somewhere where I have some strength. Like it's your team. I'm throwing it out there. You also don't know me and don't know that, but here's some references and like go check me out, man. Like, and if no hard feelings if you don't want it, but it's there. The offer's there. And he ended up saying yes. And I joined on and primarily helped, just with the offensive piece of it. So hitting, I felt like that team was a really strong defensive team, but really didn't challenge the other team's defenses too much. And I could see where there was a lot of opportunity for that with the great athletes and just learning, hey, how do we really be, disciplined in our approach? How do we optimize the mechanics of where our swings are right now? The kids are 10 years old. Like, I don't expect it to look like Mike Trout, but there's some small things. And I think a lot of coaches now will overcomplicate hitting. And so that's where a lot of my passion is. And in teaching the game, coaching is a whole nother realm that's beyond teaching, but as from the teaching aspect, that's really what I love to do. And so I joined on there. I felt like we had really positive results that fall, uh, save from some of the stuff that happened, but that team ended up folding and scattering. Luckily, Scott and I were able to stay together, join up with a group of guys and a mixed age group of kids, with the intent of like, hey, let's grow something. Let's build something cool that aligns with a little more like we want to do. And then we'll split the ages and we'll go. And so like we did that in the fall and I think it exceeded our expectations of like, what the boys were able to do with such a dramatic change to sort of a team dynamic and just like where the direction of the team was going. And so now, I think we've got that momentum. We gathered that in the fall and now we're about to start our spring. And I think we're so excited about it. So excited at like what this group of kids brings to the table, what they can do. And just the foundation that we've got is incredible. And so like, I'm just so excited to be surrounded by these guys and be able to grow what we want to grow and on the foundation of these boys, right? And to set them up for whether that's a future in baseball or if it's just a future as a good human or a strong man, right? And I think so much of what we do builds that.
Sure. So one question going back to that a little bit. So whenever you had some of the stuff with the coach that you had mentioned, what drove you out? And is it a confidence thing? Like, did it crush your confidence and you thought, I can't do this? Or was it more of like, I can do it, but they're creating these hurdles and these barriers and I just don't want to deal with it anymore? Either one of those show up?
I think it's a little more the second. And I think I would build on that and just say the identity that I had built for my whole childhood on who I was as a baseball player, where my strengths are, and what's important in this game was gone. And I wasn't allowed to be myself. I think it's important that as a kid, we don't try, and I mentioned it earlier, but we don't try to create a robot. Kids are individuals and we need to be unique, but we need to be skilled in what we do. And I felt like I had unique skills and unique abilities and I couldn't be me. So I couldn't fit a mold, an undefined mold at that, to play for this coach.
There's so many ways that I could talk about that, but it's funny because I wrote that down earlier as especially once you get into high school and you have kids that know a situation and their baseball IQ is high and you know that about these kids, right? Or you should at least. There's certain situations that the coach doesn't see that you do, such as your bunt story. And if they execute it properly, that needs to be rewarded, right? It's not I didn't call that or you didn't do what I said to do. It's not about that. Like, I mean, you look in college sports, it happens all the time, right? Is somebody will take a base when the coach doesn't call a steal because they had the base. Well, we have to start allowing that even at like, I know on y'all's team, y'all do, but on my team as well is like, if you know you have a base stolen, take it. I don't need to give you the steal sign. If you know that you have a push bunt that you can get through there, or you have one down the line, the big old third baseman is playing back and he's slow and you know you can do it. Like don't hold back, do it. But I think we have way too many coaches out there with too high of an ego to allow for that individualism to happen. And that's a story right there of that exactly thing happened and him driving you out the sport, which is unbelievable. And it should never happen. That should never happen.
Yeah, and to build on that, how do you know as a coach, how do you know what your kids are capable of if you don't let them be the ball player that they are
Right.
and learn, right? This is an age of learning and developing, and if you don't give them some freedom, think about it like I like to think about it like a highway. You've got multiple lanes, but you've got shoulders, right? As a coach, I want to keep you on the highway, but I want to give you freedom to change lanes from time
Yeah.
to time,
That's
you
a good
know?
note.
And so early in the fall season, I can't remember, Scott, if it was before our first tournament or maybe after our first tournament, but we've historically like called pitches for our pitchers. And it's not complicated. It's fastball changeup, it's spots, right? It's like, man, hey, you know what? We got some smart catchers. And we also need to teach kids to build that pitcher catcher relationship. Why don't we try letting the catchers call the games and with some stipulations like, and here's where I'm talking about, like, you stay between the shoulders. So hey, catcher and pitcher, if you guys don't talk before the game and come up with a plan and understand each other and know that pitcher's strengths and what his out pitch is and what his safety pitch is, you're not going to call pitches. But if we have that meeting and we understand where we're at and we're actually getting to know each other in that pitcher catcher relationship, then you guys have the freedom to do it. And by the way, we're going to watch. And if we see something later, that's a teaching moment. And you're not going to learn that by just being a robot and taking down everything we tell you to do. But when you're having to think through every pitch, why'd you call that? And that's the question I would ask. I wouldn't say, hey, that was the wrong call. I would say, why did you make that call? And then we can talk about it. But I think
No,
we've just got to let the kids play baseball.
go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I just having coached with Cory, in different kind of platforms where we were both assistant coaches to now we run this 11U team together. I kind of have that benefit and that and also all the stress and the gray hair of having that 14U major team, right? And so the moment I saw Cory, I was like, dude, this guy's really good with the kids. And he's teaching some really good stuff that candidly, the typical volunteer, even a paid head coach, isn't going to put in that level to that attention to detail. He's willing to look at something and say, okay, why are you doing that? Right. He asks a lot of questions. The kids, you can almost tell they're like, well, where's he going with this? And it's like, no, I'm just asking, is it because your hitting coach told you to do it? Did your dad tell you? But I got to tell you, Cory and I, we really enjoyed when we both had those assistant roles, and we felt like we were real complimentary. And then when I had the great opportunity to work with some guys that we truly love and respect, and kind of make that team with the plan, then to get age appropriate. Everything Cory is telling you guys, I just can't emphasize enough his willingness to truly buy into. They are not robots. We have to teach them baseball. We'll hold them accountable. And when he came to me and he's like, both of them call their own games. I said, why not? You know what? A mistake right now when they're 11, I don't care. We lose a tournament,
Right.
who cares? But that catcher is going to know, hey, on a 31 count, I'm not going to try to get cute, right? I'm going to go ahead and hit a spot. And I just got to say, having worked with Cory, in kind of assistant level roles to now us both being these co-head coaches in this national organization, it is rare what he and I are doing with this team because it is a player led team. We expect them to hold each other accountable. We expect them to have a high baseball IQ. He takes first base, I take third base. Guys, we've got green light guys. We've told them, you see a bag, you take a bag, right? Sometimes we have to put guys in motion. We've got green light bunt guys they might bunt every time they come up. And guess what? They'll be on 2 out of 3 times. So it's just a little bit of that, proof is in the pudding that when Cory and I got together and he really wanted to push this initiative, and I obviously having a lot of control issues and being through this, said, yeah, I trust him. Let's do it his way. It's completely changed the game. I mean, our entire fall season, we made it to the championship game every single tournament. And that's
Well, look, let me jump in. I mean, on this point, if if we as youth coaches, we all say this, well, we just want to teach the game. We want to teach these boys how to play. Okay, then I agree. Go with that. That's what you're doing. I two examples on the pitcher catcher thing, completely agree. Cory, I've said this on this show. The guy I coached with, 15 years in the big leagues as a pitcher, never called a pitch for our team ever. And he would let the catcher call the game. And, he would say to the parents, I can call every pitch. And we probably win a few more games, probably win a lot more games, actually. But these kids won't learn a thing if I just tell them what to throw. And it would play out exactly like you said. He would say it to me sitting next to him. I don't know why he called that. And then, throws the pitch, not a good result. He's not mad when the catcher comes off the field or the pitcher. And he said, look, I just want to just tell me why. As long as you have a why, you didn't flip a coin and decide to throw that pitch. What was your reasoning? And he was good with it. And maybe he would explain, well, here's why I would have thrown something different, but they were never in trouble for calling the pitch that they called. They learned the game better. Same thing with the base run and Dylan that you were talking about 2 weeks ago. I'm at, my son's in high school now, freshman. We have our, first pitch banquet, and the head coach explaining to the parents some of his philosophy, especially on the bases. He said, we're going to be very aggressive. He said, the boys already know it, right? Take the extra base. He said, we're probably going to get thrown out a lot. Not a lot, but we're going to get thrown out sometimes because it took a perfect throw to get us, and they made the perfect throw. I'm going to make them make the throw, right? If they make the throw, maybe not even perfect, it's going to take a good throw to get me out. Well, they made a good throw and we're out. He said, I'm telling you, parents, when you see your boy that gets thrown out at second or third because he was trying to take an extra base and that center fielder made a great throw and got him out, he said, I'm going to high five him when he comes off the field. And I don't want y'all confused why I'm congratulating a kid for getting thrown out, because this is my philosophy. That's what I want them doing. We've talked so much on this show about, and you were kind of mentioning it, Scott, the aggressiveness, competitiveness, baseball IQ. How do you develop those things without allowing the kids to do this? If I'm not giving you the runway to take that extra base, then how are you going to learn any of this? You're not. If our goal as a youth coach is purely to win games, well, okay, you may win fewer games by doing what we're saying, but ultimately that shouldn't be your goal. If your goal is really what you said it was, which is to teach these kids how to play baseball, that's how you do it. I mean, exactly what y'all just said. So just kind of reiterating all of that.
Yeah, to teach them and then let them. We have to let them do it, not
Correct.
teach them and then control it. Yeah. And so have you guys this is related, but it might not sound related, so just follow me for a second. Have you guys ever heard of The Thin Book of Trust? Has anybody heard of that book?
Oh,
So
probably has.
I fortunately work for a fantastic company that really invests in the people and development of the people. And so this is actually an exercise that I've done at work. And I do construction management. I'm going to tie this together, but I do construction management. So we go build projects, right? And we throw teams together that may not have worked together before. And then we got to go execute a building in a very short amount of time with a team that's not been a team before. 90% of the time, that's the case. And so to get to a high performing team takes time. And so, what this book is about is how do you build trust and build it effectively where you can actually operate as a team. And so, I mean, I tie this into the way a baseball team operates. You've got your coaches who are your leaders, right? At least on the surface as your leaders. Scott and I talk about player led, and so we want to drive it to be player led. But at the end of the day, we're the ones guiding the ship and steering it. And then you have the team, and so there's got to be trust amongst the players, and there's got to be trust back up to the coaches. And so the way this book breaks down what trust means and how to build it and what's important there is between four things, and that's sincerity. Like, am I genuine? Is what I say and what I do match? Like, do I say, hey, guys, we need to be respectful, and then I'm screaming profanity at the umpire? I'm not very sincere, and thus I've lost a pillar of trust. Another one of them is reliability. Like, do I do what I say I'm going to do? If I say, hey, player A, train really hard at first base, do X, Y, and Z, and that's your position, and he does all those things and he has no explanation and he doesn't play first base, then I'm not reliable, right? So I've lost another pillar. Competence is the other. And so, like, do I know what I'm talking about? Is basically what that means. And so this is where, like, I could go down this rabbit hole too that I won't right now about paid coaches versus dad coaches, but this is where paid coaches are mostly going to nail it, right? They've got an extensive playing background, maybe college, maybe pro, whatever that is. So they're competent. They know the game. They know what they're talking about. But do they have the other three pillars? And the last one, maybe the most important, is care. Like, do I genuinely have your interests at heart, right? As a player from the coach or as a player to player, right? And I think, that's something that I focus on a lot is like, do these guys trust me? And can I demonstrate these four things? And if I can do that, then they'll do that for each other and they will go play. This is where I'm tying it together. They will go play like wheels off, no fear, right? No fear of like, what's coach going to do to me? Is he going to abandon me? Is he going to sit me on the bench forever if I make a mistake? Is he going to, put me down in the bottom of the order if I strike out looking one time, right? But if you develop that trust, that allows them to be themselves. It allows them to be individuals and play wheels off like dogs to their identity. And I think that's one of the reasons that our boys play the way they do is because they don't have this fear of what's going to happen. What's coach going to do or not do?
Let's get Dylan first.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Cory, this question goes way back. Okay. So I've watched you over the years, right? I'm a different coach now than I was back then, as we all know. I have a short fuse. I'm very charismatic and I get angry very quick, right? So I've had to learn how to be more calm and collective during games for my kids, right? I've had to learn that over the years and I've gotten better at it. I'm still not the best and I'm still working on it. I've always, as we've talked about on the podcast before, and the whole reason why I brought Brock to go and try out for you was because I knew you, right? I hadn't known Scott yet, but I knew you. I knew how you coached. I knew what you believed in, and I watched you coach. And I always sensed I always sensed you knew exactly what you were talking about, but then I also saw a demeanor that most coaches don't have, and your ability to be able to remain calm with these boys, not ever seem frustrated, even though you might be, and the ability to talk to kids in the right way. So my question was that a learned behavior or is that just who you are? Like, have you always been that way?
I think it's probably a little of both. But I'm a very principled person, so like I will stick to that above emotions most of the time. But a little bit of it is learned too. It's, being around kids, going through maybe some of that myself where I didn't have that level of trust, and then understanding what it takes to make somebody feel comfortable to be themselves, to be unique, to bring their best self, every day to the ball field. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it's a little bit of both. Like I'm not a yeller. I will have firm conversations, and part of my identity growing up was given to me by my dad. I mean, a lot of it. And I mentioned in my bio, like my dad played a little baseball. He was more of a football guy, but man, when I was in it, he was all in, so he was doing everything he could, but the values that he brought were on the mental side, right? It's like, hey, mental mistakes are not okay out here. Physical mistakes are okay. And, maybe I didn't really fully understand that when he started telling me that as a kid. But over the years, he stayed so consistent with that message that I grew to understand it better. And it's like, man, am I doing my best? I mean, it's that simple, really. Like, am I giving it 100%? Am I doing everything I can to to make a play, to help my team, whatever that is? That's when I can be satisfied, when I can look back and have no regrets on what I've done. And so, I think where I would tend to come down a little harder on somebody is when I see that. And Scott's seen me do it. It's not yelling and screaming, but it's firm. It may be in your face a little bit, but it's going to hold somebody accountable for those type of controllable things that are totally character based, right? You have to have good character to play this game and to make it in life, especially as a man trying to lead a family, right? I mean, not everybody gets this stuff at home, and I read a quote once and it was like, hey, my kid never tells me what their teachers at school say, but they always tell me what you say as a coach. And so it's like, well, no pressure, right? Thanks for that. But it does make you feel like a lot of importance. Like, man, I also need to show up as my best self when I'm out there
Yeah.
on the field with the guys. And it's not going to happen every time. I'm going to try my best every time, but it's not going to happen every single time. But if I'm trying to stick to my principles, then I think that's the way I'm going to show up, and that's the way they need me to show up.
That's good.
Go ahead, Scott.
Cory, you touched on a point that I think is so valuable for parents to hear. Coaching with you, we have gotten so much out of these kids. And I truly believe the way, just so you all know, Cory sets the defense. He makes personnel decisions, right? I got to deal with the 14U problem. I don't need to talk about a parent and who's playing where. We have a handful of very talented kids. So let's use the example. We have an outfielder, right? Guy's a stud. Cory's okay if he makes 2 or 3 errors, as long as they're physical. And I think it's that concept, and it's not an analogy to baseball, but I feel like a lot of times parents should be looking for, is the coach moving the goalposts on my kid? I think that's a red flag. I really do feel like if you're with a good coach, they're making it very clear, okay, your son wants to play X, wants to hit here, whatever that might be. Well, if that kid's coming to practice, working hard, exhibiting those traits, that coach then should be able to explain to that child, and especially at the age we're talking about, now 14s, I'm saying, candidly, if your mom or dad are calling me at this point, you're too old for that. But when they're 11, I do understand. We get phone calls from parents. Hey, how come he didn't play in this? It's part of the gig. Cory has found this path, and I'd like for you to try to explain it, Cory, about how do you create that confidence and consistency without hurting at the end of the day, right? What we ultimately have to do. Our job is to coach these guys, develop them, and the byproduct should be winning the games. But it's been very good for me to learn from Cory this ability to make it very clear, hey, if you've won this job, you've won this job, and I've got your back. And not every day is fun. Not every day is great. It's baseball, like we talked about earlier. It's the hardest sport you could pick. And he's somehow brings that. And I don't know if you can explain to Cory what that secret sauce is, but I've learned a ton, and I'm trying more and more to apply that to my 14s, just because it is easy to go, kid kicked 3 balls, he's not playing second game, as opposed to, hey, was it a physical? Was it mental? If it's mental, candidly, you might not. But if it was a physical and everything looked right, you know what? Bad hops happen, right? Bad throws happens. Cory, I just feel like that's something we can kind of just peel that back a little bit, man, because you have a gift for it.
Well, yeah, thanks for that. I think it goes back to the whole trust conversation. And Scott, here, you've heard me ask this to our team, I don't know, 50 times, because it's a culture that I wanted to create, because I think it's important. And it's, hey, guys, who do you play for? I ask our players that. Who do you play for? And we've trained them to where their answer is each other. We play for the team. And so the distinction there is, you don't play for Coach Cory. You don't play for Coach Scott. I'm not the one that's judging you. I'm not the one that's going to retaliate against what happens. And I'll give this example real quick. If I had 3 or 4 players come up and say, hey, I don't want player X playing this position anymore because he's hurting us, that would go a long ways, because the players are who they're accountable to, right? But I'm there to guide. I'm there to teach. I'm there to pave the path and step in and lead when needed, right? But really, until I mean, they have to play for each other, and when they do that, it's a totally different culture than this. Like, I'm playing for that guy who's watching my every move, standing outside the dugout, and I'm fearing for what he may do if X happens. And so it goes back to trust. Like, where's the trust? How deeply ingrained is it amongst the teammates and amongst the relationship between the players and the coach? And so, I'm a believer that positions are primarily earned in practice. I mean, you're going to show me if you've got the grit, you're going to show me if you've got the skills, you're going to show me how hard you're going to work, how bad you want it in practice. And then you're going to get your shots in games. And, rare cases like kids can't perform in games like they can in practice. I think that's a little more rare, but most of the time, I think you're going to find your best fit for each spot. At least we'll call it Sunday spots in practices. And that's where the hard work's done. So that's where the reward should be given from, in my opinion. And so if we've got a kid who say wants to play shortstop and he's earned shortstop in practice and in the behaviors that we see outside of the games, and does that last 10% of like reinforcing it when the pressure's on in games, then that's his spot, right? That's who I want there. That's who I want in my corner. That's who the team wants in their corner. And they've earned that amongst their teammates. Like, hey, this is a leader. This is the guy I want in that spot. This is who I trust, right? Back to the trust thing. I found that he's competent there. I found that he cares about the team, all the things. Then you put your arm around that guy and you say, "Go get it, baby. Like, it's yours." I don't want you playing like our brains don't respond to ourselves telling ourselves negative things. The opposite. Like, if I'm standing in the box and saying don't strike out, all my brain is hearing is strike out. That's all it's hearing. I mean, it's not hearing the negative part. That's the way our brains work. And I'm sure you guys know that. So let's go back to the shortstop example. If I'm playing shortstop and I'm hearing don't boot a ball, that's what I'm telling myself because I'm scared if I boot one, I'm going to get moved. Then get ready because you're about to boot one. And that's a mental mistake because that's a negative thought. It's not confidence in yourself, right? You have to play with confidence. And so when that trust is there, then the kids are allowed to do that. They're absolutely allowed to do that. And the only way they can lose it is by making their own mental mistakes. Right. And, if they do have that tough game, when they do have that tough game, I think it's important as coaches and as teammates. And we try to encourage this to the kids that aren't the ones that are having the rough day because it's coming for all of us. I mean, it's coming for every single one of you. Go put your arm around that teammate and say, "Hey, brother, it's okay, man. I know you can do it. Today's not your day. It's okay. But you know what? You can crawl out of it right now. You can crawl out of it right now. Make the choice that you don't care what just happened because it's happened to every other kid on this team. It's happened to every other kid on the other team. And go out there and just compete as hard as you can every pitch next time." And I think it's amazing when they have that feeling of the non-negative failure, that we were talking about. If it's thinking the positive, I'm going to do this. I can do this. It's amazing how quick they can climb out of that.
Yeah, that's great. I want to kind of key on a few things. The first one is what you said about trust. So trust is so important because it seems to be somewhat generalizable to where if we can teach or if you can teach the kids to trust you as a coach, that can help them trust themselves as a player. And then that's a key ingredient to confidence. If they go into a situation or really this is what I teach in my competing with confidence system is you trust your training, you trust the process. And so whenever you get to the plate or you get wherever, you're thinking positively and you think I can do this. I've sometimes used the example of like with my son trying to teach him, if he had a $5 bill and he was going to go into the store and buy a pack of gum, how confident is he that he's going to leave with that gum? Well, I mean, you don't even think about it. Of course, I'm going to leave with the gum. I'm not even going to consider the option that I don't leave with the gum. And that's what we really want to get with confidence is they stand up there and it never even crosses their mind that the desired outcome isn't going to happen. Now, is that realistic? No, of course, the desired outcome is not always going to happen. And then we get into this idea of delusional optimism, but it all comes down to that trusting the process. And we try to teach people, like with Dylan's team, teach the kids to get into the habit of writing those positive statements. And it's true. If you write it enough, it will become much more of a habit. And it teaches that skill. Trust and confidence is a skill. You practice it every single day throughout the practice at the end of the day, and it just becomes habitual that they kind of think more positively. So that was great. I got really excited hearing you. Scott, I think you had something to add too.
Yeah, one of the things that I've implemented, and it's kind of a little cheat code for coaches, paid dads, whatever. I push the team to create I call it the players council. Okay. And essentially what it comes down to is, a handful of kids, say maybe two or three, they can speak on behalf of the team. They can come to me at any time, especially the older kids. I mean, I have a group text, right? Where they can say, "Hey coach, we have a concern." And I will tell you, going back to Cory's point, that it's all about, we will continue to develop, but we will cut cancer out. Right. And if the team feels that strong and they're willing to go to a council, and it comes to me that we're really tired of player X saying this in the dugout. We're really tired. He finds out that he's about to go into a high level moment and he doesn't have the confidence. He's telling his teammates that. It's a tool that, honestly, if you just tell them, listen, whatever you bring to me, I won't be mad about. Okay. And it really kind of forces them to communicate more and catch things that, candidly, when we're trying to manage, 12, 13 kids running all over the place, we don't hear all the conversations. Right. And I tell my guys, you all don't have to be best friends. Okay. But you have to be great teammates. And having that tool, especially as the kids get older, it really does make a coach's life a lot easier. Because when I do get a text and I find out, why, I didn't realize this kid's not come from one situation, at the very least, I know not to put him in it. Or, oh my, this kid is rotting my team from the inside out and I need to make a change. When Cory was talking about that, it kind of felt like one of those, if you are running a team and you want the players to buy in, give them enough rope to do something with.
That's good. I like that. I like that a lot.
And I think, going back to those 4 pillars of trust, right? Sincerity. Like, if you implement that and then they bring you something, you got to do something about it, right? You have to be sincere in what you say. And I mean, every time you do that, you've heard probably the phrase like, trust is lost in buckets and earned in drips or earned in drops, right? It's like every single time you do one of those things right, it's drops in that bucket. The fuller that bucket gets, man, the more you're able to be yourself and perform at a high level.
Let me ask.
Let me jump in. Well, Dylan, let me just say real quick to build on a little bit on what Scott was saying. Agree completely, but I would add, when you're talking about cutting out a cancer, don't be afraid of who it is. Okay, we all had some coach at probably a higher level, tell us, no one's immune to that, whether you're going to sit, whether you're going to get kicked off the team, whatever. We really care more about developing these kids than we do just winning a game, then we're going to be willing to kick our best player off the team if that's what needs to happen. We did it.
Amen.
I've said that before. So I just would add that, completely agree, but no one's immune to it. That's it.
Do y'all have, Scott, do all the players know that you have this counselor, or is that private? I wonder.
So what I try to do is I try to get them early on. We try to do some team building non-baseball type stuff, right? It might be, hey, let's all, go bowling, right? Or, hey, we'll come to the house and we'll throw a barbecue, kids swim. I try to get them early on, especially when we have additions or subtractions, to get to know each other outside the baseball field, right? It's during those times you start to see who's drawn to who, right? Because every team, no matter how great you try to construct it, you're going to have, these guys are good pals, these guys are good pals, but it goes back to they're all good teammates. I have no problem very formally telling the players, It is my expectation that if you have a concern with this team, that you all identify the leaders to bring it to me. And, they kind of half them give you a look like, and the other half are going, I get it. And let's be honest, it's the kids nodding their head who are like, oh, I get it. Those are the two or three that are going to pick up on, hey, Joe said this about Rob, right? And next thing you know, you find out, well, that's not good, right? And so I guess I try to set up the framework and then let it kind of organically
Okay.
build.
I got you. That makes sense.
Quite the lull. Joe,
What you
want to
got,
talk
Kyle?
about?
Who? Me?
Yeah,
Me?
you.
Yeah, I think what I'm thinking back to the trust thing, and I'm wondering if there's anything y'all implement. Well, this is going to be a poorly worded question, but I've just been working on this athlete workbook that we have the past week, and again, the idea is that, well, they're gonna sit down and they're gonna think about this stuff, and I really liked what y'all said earlier about, and I've never thought of it this way before, but thinking stimulates learning. All too often we see it's horrible in the education system, the public education system. We want to give kids the answer, but that's not how it works, right? You ask them and then let them formulate the answer. And if they get it wrong, you kind of, well, you can take different approaches there, right? But let's say that they don't really know what the right answer is, so they're going to try these different strategies. It takes them longer to get to the answer, but they've learned it better. And it's a long-term method, but that's how learning occurs. But what we try to do with some of Dylan's athletes is physically, I've made them a journal, and they're going to physically write this stuff down. And I know I already kind of said that earlier, but I'm wondering, whenever it comes to the trusting the process, the confidence, that type of stuff, is there anything like that y'all do? Do you ever encourage like journaling or even just having a discussion about it, or how does that play out in your teams?
Hey, Corey, why don't you tell about our last practice, buddy? Because I'm pretty sure that's exactly what you assigned.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll go to that second. But first, one thing that I've encouraged kids to do, because you always want to have a message after practice or after a game or to, tie off the end of a tournament or whatever it is. You want to have a message. You want to give them something to walk away with, not just, hey, things happened and now it's over and now we just go do it again. Like what can we learn from this? And so one thing I've encouraged them to do a lot in the past is like, hey, when we leave here, I want you to think of what we talked about and talk about it with your parents on the way home. And when you get home, write down a few things that you remember. Like I buy into the philosophy of like, I'm going to say, 100 words and they're going to get 20 of them. They're going to leave with 20 of them in their mind. So it's like, well, let's grab onto those 20, right? Whatever resonated with you or whatever you thought, like go write it down, go talk to it about, or go talk to somebody about it, whether it's your parents, your brother, your sister, or aunt and uncle, whatever that is, and reinforce it in your mind. So what Scott's talking about, like last practice, we're doing this grit program. I know you guys had a great podcast on that a couple weeks ago, but there's a lot of movements that these guys have not done before. There's some baseball skills work that we're doing as well. Some of it, some of the kids are really good at, and you know that they're doing it. And some of the kids, it's like, hey, this is the first time they're doing it, or at least it's the first time they're doing it right. And so it's like, okay, what did you pick on out of here that you need to go do? Go write those things down. And then I want you to write down when you're doing them and every day you're doing them. And so, and then like report back, but don't report back to me, report back to your teammates. Like, I don't even want to be in the conversation. I don't want to know what you guys did and didn't do. Go tell each other what you did and didn't do. And what I'll ask them is, hey, you get home from school, 3:45, whatever that is. You're sitting around playing Fortnite, waiting for a game to load or whatever. You just happen to start thinking about your teammates. What do you wish they were doing right now? Because whatever you wish they were doing is what they wish you were doing, not playing Fortnite, right? And then it's like, take a week. Another thing I've challenged them with, I haven't done that this spring yet because we haven't had enough space to really do that. But the other thing I've challenged them with is do your normal routine for a week. Like, you don't have to try to do anything different, but write down how you spend your time. And I want you to look back on it, total all that time up, and then tell me if that reflects what your passions and your goals are.
Yeah.
Because I think I think related to the writing and repeating and all that, like I totally buy into that, Kyle. I think you're spot on with that. But I think like just the grouping of time, like we lose perception of that unless we really take a full accounting of it and then reflect. And kids don't reflect on things, unless it's something that's really the power of like reflection too. I think, as a plan to like align with your goals. Cause if we're not talking about what's happened in the past, how do we know how to influence our future? And so if we sit and we write, here's how I spent my time this week. I don't like that. I'm going to make an adjustment. Rather, if I do none of that, I
Yeah.
keep doing the same thing. I pick up idle behaviors or I spend time doing things that are easy, not things that
Yeah.
are intentional.
We've sort of formalized that process, I would say, and that's so great to hear that that's something y'all do. Kind of confirms what we've been doing. But we've broken it down to I call them IPRs and ESP. So IPR is an immediate progress review. And what we encourage kids to do is between drills. This is in practice, and I don't even know what baseball drills are. I need to learn some of this stuff. But they stop, and I know this takes up practice time, but it's like, I want you to think about the best rep from that drill. What was it? What did it feel like? How did it go? And they write it down. And then they move on to the next drill. And then after that, you take 2 minutes, get your workbook out. What was the best thing that happened from there? And then at the end of the day, we do the ESP, which is effort, success, and progress. What's one area? And this can be one word or it can be a sentence. What's one area today where you gave 100% effort? It doesn't have to be in baseball. It can just be as being a child or a human. And what's one success from today? And then the other one is like, what's one thing you've been working on where you saw progress? And the key is the repetition of the writing makes it a habit to where eventually they get their own journal and they keep up with this, or it just becomes so habitual that they just naturally think about those positives as they move forward. And it's not saying that we live in a fairy tale world where bad things don't happen. Of course we do, but it's so easy for us to think negatively. We should encourage positivity because the world is going to beat them down enough. But we should be, taking the positives, carry that positive forward. Don't worry about the negative. And again, it's physical. They're writing it down, so it's very physical to do that, not typing it. There's something about having to shape letters with a pencil that is or a pen that's substantially different than typing it with your thumbs.
Kyle, it's actually kind of interesting because we do these grit workouts that we put together, right? And we've discussed that, and it's just like embrace the suck, right? That's why we're there. A little bit of baseball mixed in, and I love those. Another thing that I really enjoy working with Cory on, and we do it with my older team as well. You were talking about we have a practice plan, right? We know exactly the things we want to cover. It could be preventative or it could be reactionary to what we've seen. Okay. So we show up prepared. I think coaches need to be willing to stop practice more often and say, everyone on me. Because I got to tell you, Cory and I could run a practice that might as well bring out the bucket because the kids are going to be lining up for it, right? I mean, we're just going to run them to death and we'll get 1,000 reps. Okay. Are they becoming a better baseball player or a better robot? If we see something and we go, whoa, 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 that's not the fundamental I'm looking for. We can keep the intensity up, but hey, get on us. And what I really, really appreciate is that doing it at this younger age, it's going to be so much easier because now having, 14-year-olds, I've got kids coming off of other majors teams. Yeah. I mean, we got some studs on the older team and they're just used to like, well, no, you just run practice. You go, go, go. And I'm like, no, if it's not right, we're going to talk about it. And then oddly enough, to your point, if we do something great, let's get in here and talk about that. Like that one felt good, boys. Like, did you feel it? And you'd be amazed as a coach how often the kids, like when we're talking about like, tell me how that one felt. And you hit it out of the park and they're like, that was it, coach. Like that was how it should feel, and there's so many drills we do, right? I mean, turn into, you see that beautiful 6-4-3 and you're just like, we all need to admit that was beautiful, right? Like, celebrate that stuff.
Yeah.
But then you also got to correct the bad stuff. And so I just think that's another one of those kind of real world applications that's so easy to install as a coach. And yeah, are you going to get 10 less minutes on the field that you paid $250 for? Yeah. But do you ultimately end up with kids who going back to pillars, right? They know they can trust us. They know that there's an accountability and there's a standard. And if we're not meeting the standard, we'll shut it down. But when we exceed it, I want to celebrate that with those kids.
I think that part kind of answers some of your question, Kyle, about how do you build the trust and what do you do to help build it. It's kind of what Scott just said. We have a philosophy as a coach, or a game plan, or an approach, whatever you want to call it. We stick to that. Whether it's how we run our practices. Completely agree with Cory. The talk after the game, which the parents can't stand, and it's not an hour and a half long. It's 10 minutes. Set your timer. But that's important, and the progression of that post game talk. We'll tackle the negative first. I'm gonna send y'all out of here with the positive at the end of that talk, because when you leave here, it's over. But I think staying true to that is how you build the trust. You've told these kids how you're going to coach, what's important to you, what's not. Well, you have to demonstrate that too. And through that demonstration and being the coach that you said you were going to be, you build that trust. It's just, it's sort of inherent in that process that the trust becomes a byproduct of how you're coaching. And I'm going to say, by and large, especially with good coaches like all of us are, you have that between the coach and the kids. It's not difficult to accomplish, and it's being accomplished. The parents are the ones that are probably disconnected and doubting this trust. I think, the connection between the coaches and the kids is what we're saying it needs to be. We have accomplished that with the kids. I guess I don't really have any, processes or procedures to build that trust with the parents. So maybe that's why it doesn't exist, but it does exist with the kids. And I think everybody sort of needs to trust that we did accomplish that.
You are so spot on. I talk about it all the time. It's the power of the dinner table. I mean, when we leave them, we're adults, we know baseball, we know how to coach kids. We can send a very specific message, right? This is why Cory and I are so perfectly aligned when it does come to the entire package, not just the player, but the family. So much is undone when you're telling the player, the athlete, the kid, this is what you need to do to reach your goals. And they go home and they hear, yeah, coach is going to give you a shot. I mean, we all know where you should be hitting. And unfortunately, what do we get? 5 hours with them a week, maybe? And then they go home to the person who literally controls their life, and they're hearing, you know what, buddy, you're getting a bad deal. And then guess what that leads to? It leads to the kid who, at least, every other year, if not more often, is finding the next spot, right? I just wish the parents could detach a little bit and realize, okay, objectively, is my son or daughter as competitive, as great as that kid? And that's Sunday, guys. I mean, let's just call the ball. We're going to put in all the work. Saturday, we're going to move them around. We're going to take the draw we get. And at the end of the day on Sunday, we're going to go put our best 9 out there. We're going to hit the order, because if you're not good enough to be on the team, then I shouldn't be batting 9. Okay. So I look at that, and I just wish more parents could get enough separation and not undo what we're trying to build. Because God forbid they actually say, well, what did coach tell you? Well, coach said my feet aren't quick enough. Hey, you know what, son? Let's go get the speed ladder out and work on that. Switching teams is the easiest out, man.
Look, well, and to my point, if you tell the kid that your feet aren't fast enough, quick enough, there's no negative. I don't think that's a negative takeaway for the player. they're like, okay, they hear you, they're willing to correct it, but it's what you say. It's when they go home and the parent pollutes that message with something else. That's where the problems come in. And that's what I'm saying. You have this trust built in between the player and the coach, and these negatives don't come from a comment like that until they hear it from their parents.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is going to be around communication too. And I don't believe, so don't take this way. I don't believe that I need to be given, little Johnny's parents an update every week on how he's doing. But I should be clear in the expectations for spots, whether that be defensive or in the order, not necessarily to the parents, but I should be consistent with how I administer that. And I think there's nothing wrong with giving some unsolicited feedback to parents on kids at this age, especially if, some kids, I've got a couple kids in the past that don't want to say a word to you, much less come and ask you an uncomfortable question, you know? And I think, I totally agree with Scott. As they get to 14, like, probably even earlier than that, it's definitely time to speak for yourselves. But early on, talking with parents in the younger ages, I think can be productive and it can avoid some negative, future conversations or future situations where we have a conflicting dinner table conversation from a practice or one-on-one with a player conversation. So, you know, I love getting feedback from parents. I welcome it. And I'll even say, like I've gotten some from Dylan before, and I know he didn't want to give it to me. And I told him like, hey man, why did you wait so long? Like I am always learning and I am not perfect. And if I miss something, man, then I miss it, and I'm gonna own that and I'm gonna see what I can do. But I can tell you, like, Brock didn't get on the mound until our very last tournament. And Dylan challenged me without challenging me. He did it very respectfully, but just kind of like asking me a few questions. And I'm like, hey, here was my perception. That's I'm hearing that that's wrong. And I'm glad you said something because it's kind of one of those I'm a little on the fence type of situations. And man, I embraced it. And I was like, dude, for God's sake, man, he could have pitched in every tournament for us this year. And like, God bless, man, why'd you wait so long? So, like, I welcome it
It's
when
a
it's done
fall.
the right way, you know? Right. Yeah. It's got like, if you got to have rules, for the parents too, right? Like, I don't need you coming and catching me when I'm walking out the gate, but pick up the phone, talk to me respectfully. I'm going to listen to what you have to say. I was just a dad for a while, right? I know the way my kid plays better than anybody does, and it's like, there's probably some other dads out there like that. Like, come talk to me. Tell me what you're seeing in the backyard that I'm not seeing in the 4 to 5 hours a week so I can go make good decisions for him, good decisions for this team. Like it's definitely difficult. Parents can be one of the hardest parts. I think there's a few things we can do proactively as coaches, but at the same time, some are just going to be the way they are.
Yeah, it's usually the ones that never played either. I don't know if maybe this is expecting too much from a parent, but there's a difference when you tell a story about Dylan as a parent of a kid on your team, right? But Dylan's also a baseball guy. He's a coach. So I guess, my perspective as a coach, if Dylan's one of my parents, I mean, I'm going to hear what he says,
Yep.
versus a mom or a dad who didn't make his high school team. I mean, you never played this game, right? Maybe I wish parents they're never going to, so I'm wasting my breath, but understand who they are too. They need to understand themselves, before they approach a coach and argue or give an opinion about something they don't know anything about.
Well, I think that's a great point. And if I were to give advice to parents before you join a team, stop asking Facebook how this organization is and all these things, right? Go talk to the coach. Like, if you send them to a tryout and they say, hey, we like this, we like your son, we want him to be on team X or team Y, cool. I'd like to have a phone call with the coach and go watch him play. Like, before we joined, with where Scott was the first time, we just showed up. Like, I didn't say, hey, we're going to come watch you guys play. We just showed up. We watched them play back to back, and I was like, okay, I like a lot of the things I see from these coaches. Aside from when Scott, went and kicked dirt on the plate and screamed at the umpire. Totally kidding. Totally kidding. Totally kidding. But
I've never been thrown
but
out.
but like but parents, like, that's my advice. Go look for those four pillars of trust because that's what's going to matter. And if you say, yes, I have confidence in this, then believe that. Like, demonstrate that yourself and say, I trust the choice I made and I'm going to leave it in the hands of the coach. And if I have anything to say, I'm going to wait a time so it's not emotional. I'm going to do it respectfully and have an adult conversation.
Yeah, that says it all to me because you said it at the beginning and we've said it before. There's so many different organizations and there's so many different coaches and we all have different styles. I mean, we align a lot, but ultimately there's a fit for you for your kid out there. If it's not me, that's fine. Maybe it's Cory if it's not me or whatever. But I agree with you. Do your due diligence as a parent. But once you make that decision that, hey, Cory's my guy, I like well, then you need to trust him and let it happen. You know,
That's it.
don't say Cory is where I want my kid to play, even though you don't really like Cory's style, and then complain about it the whole time. No, you should have picked a different team.
That's right.
One thing to point out on the feedback, and I know we've talked about it here before. We probably all know this, but kids are going to pay a lot more attention to your actions and your behavior than they will the words that you say. So whenever you think about that, like how are we as coaches? How are you receiving feedback, and how are you acting towards that? Because the kids are going to see that, and so thinking of that too. Of let's say a parent doesn't necessarily approach you the way that you think they should. Well, and I'm sure you all do this, but the kids watching how you respond to that feedback in that moment, they're going to be much more likely to respond to feedback the same way. And so it kind of translates, and it just goes back to that trust of being the person that you want the kids to be, your kids to see. That builds that trust, and those behaviors, they'll start to adapt that too. They'll respond better to feedback if they see you handle feedback well as well.
Well, I think there's only one type of feedback that you can give, and that's honest feedback. Like I've said, otherwise you're going to make a mistake in your feedback. Our philosophy was always with the parents. Same thing with the kids too. I shouldn't even say with the parents. Maybe more so with the parents, but the truth is it's with the kids too. Come to me with whatever you need to, good, bad, indifferent. Nothing's off the table. You make any comment you want, but what I will guarantee you is you're going to get the honest answer back. You know, Maybe they're not going to like the answer, but it was an honest answer.
I think you
I
can.
also think too, you got to set an expectation early on, parent meeting, making it very clear. Hey, listen, no one's more frustrated than Cory and I when we didn't come through in the championship game because we ran out of arms. Right. The last thing we're going to do is talk about it in the parking lot. So at our parents meeting, we're going to say this is just a non-negotiable. Okay, I'm happy to discuss it. You can call me anytime, but that has to be a hard and fast rule. And I will tell you, I probably had, I don't know, 15 times that I had a mom or a dad waiting for me to tell me something, whether it was a strategy play, which I'm going, you got to be kidding me. Why didn't you only get to do this? I'm thinking, well, you're not paying attention, you're not doing work at home. And I just literally am like, hey, it's not here. It's not right now. We all signed the contract at the start. We all agreed to the terms of this. You need to cool off. And candidly, I need to cool off. I don't like to lose. We work too hard. I got to get in the truck with my son, who's just as upset as your son that we didn't go home as a champion. So I think you just set that crystal clear expectation. And honestly, it's zero expectations. And if I've had this happen too, someone wants to continue to push and push and push, you say, I don't know if you need to attend the next practice. We're going down a path now that is not a part of the culture, that is going to be a part of my team. And it's harsh. Parents can derail great players' success in future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I was telling this story before everybody got on and we were live. So again, my son's in high school, so I'm a parent now. And what the varsity coach said, which I loved, now older kids, right? We're not talking about 9 or 10-year-olds, but I think you can do this at some level of youth ball. Is his philosophy absolutely the 24-hour rule, that, or more? But he said the kid's going to come to me first. Have the boy. I'm not going to talk to you as a parent until your boy comes to me, and I'll talk to him about it. If y'all are still not satisfied with the answer, well, then as a parent, you can come to me. 100%. It's not going to be after the game. We all agree with that. But I sort of liked that. Again, we can't ask a 10-year-old to do that, I guess, but can you a 13, a 14? Yeah, I think you can.
12.
I started at
Yeah,
12.
I agree. That's what I told Dylan. I think 12 is the magic age where you can start to transition to this. They're older now, in a lot of ways. But I really like that. That was the first time I honestly had ever heard that from the varsity coach, was have the boy come to me first.
And you know what, the way how you frame it as a coach is you say, listen, this is the expectation I have for you. If you have a concern, I need to hear it from you first. After that, at the end of the day, your parents are writing checks, they're driving you all over the place. Okay. Then I'll hear from them. The only exception is if you feel unsafe. If you feel like I'm putting you in a position that is not safe, then you go to your parents and they need to immediately contact me and the owner of the organization. I also don't want anyone to ever feel like Coach Scott's going to, hold us hostage because I got to talk to him first. I always put that marker in there when I talk to these kids and I say it in front of the parents too. Like, if your child feels unsafe, they are to come to you. If this is about why aren't they playing left field, I'm having the first conversation before you call me.
And Scott, I think you alluded to this, or you said this, where paying attention to the mental performance and starting to learn some of these practices and develop as habits. One of the reasons I focus my research on adolescence is because it's a developmental period in their life. Between the ages of 11 to 13, for boys, a lot happens. And if we can start teaching them how to build confidence and maintain confidence at that age, they're going to be much more likely to maintain those habits as they get older and really get in tough situations as older teenagers and going to college, like boys do. But kind of thinking about that, Corey, like what's one mindset principle you think younger players should learn at an early age?
Yeah, that's great. I think the hardest thing, from working with kids for a while, I think the hardest thing to teach is competitive drive. Like, that's a code I haven't cracked. Like, if a kid comes and he just doesn't have that nature of competitiveness in him, it's very difficult to make them a ball player. So let's assume that they already have that, because most of the kids that I'm around do, that are still playing this game at this age. And I think the advice I would give to the player is to continue to work through it and embrace what's not going well. We had a player, we'll call him G, okay? Just for the sake of putting a name on him, we'll call him G. And I was personally involved with this kid's progress in his hitting, his approach, his swing mechanics, all of it. Man, he got to a point where the ball's popping off the barrel. But guess where it was going? I'll give you guys one guess where it was going. Straight at people. Okay. And I'm talking like tanks, line drives. And it was like, hey, man, if you're not smiling when you're walking off the field after that, then we need to redefine success. And so what we're going to do is we're going to dig in and we're going to just keep working through it. You're doing the right things. Keep doing those things. The baseball gods will smile on you, I promise. And then, I mean, it wasn't like one game later, the ball started falling and it didn't stop falling. And so, the attitude that he approached that with was not poor me. It was not, I'm just not going to be able to figure this out or be good. It was, I'm embracing the work I'm doing, and I know that it's going to pay off. I know that eventually things are going to start happening for me. And, you know, I got to watch this homie hit his first home run last year. And, Scott can clarify who this is if he wants to, but just such a great, like, there's light at the end of that tunnel. If you're going to live in that area that's like, it's not working for me, but I kind of don't care, because success is going to be defined by how I define it. And I'm going to define it by, I'm hitting the ball hard, or I'm getting 1% better, or whatever that is. You got to go find what that next thing is and what that next step of success is. And then the results will come. It may not come right when you want them to, but they're going to come.
Well, look, let me jump in and tell a quick story. Barry Bonds, actually, I saw a video of him talking about this very thing, and he approached his hitting as it's me against the pitcher. Period. He said, I can't beat 9 guys. I'm only one guy, but I can beat that pitcher. Okay. So he says, I hit a hard line drive right to the second baseman, and he gets out, and he said, the pitcher's happy. He's like, what are you happy about? I beat you. I didn't beat your goons out there, but I beat you. And I think that's really a powerful perspective as a hitter. Once that ball leaves the bat, you can't control anything as a hitter. We had a little drill game we played, knockout, right? Nothing revolutionary here. I'm sure we all do it. Where everybody gets in there in the box, and we hit the ball, and if right now, I'll just say, if you got a hit, you were still in the game. If you didn't, you were eliminated. You go to last man standing. But we defined hit as it was a barrel. You hit a barrel, you're still in. I don't care if it went. I don't care where it went. You hit a barrel. Period. End of story. You beat the pitcher. So I think if you impart that perspective on these kids, to your example, Cory, he was having a lot of success. He's crushing the ball. The result may have been an out in that moment, but that's not failure. Go ahead, Scott.
Just to wrap this up. So my younger son's name is Grant. And he goes by G, and he was about a career +50 hitter. Cory got into his head, got into his mechanics, and he's definitely top half of the team. And it's just, I truly view Cory as the guy who, my son loves baseball, and Cory's actually helping him reach the potential, which I can never thank him enough for that.
That's great. Yeah, Cory wanted me to talk about that too. That aligns with like everything in sports psychology, to where you teach the person, regardless of the sport, or whether it's in business or whatever, you teach them to focus on the process and not worry about the outcome. And eventually, if they're dialed into that process enough, and if that process is, it's like a motivational loop, like it really is a loop. And if that process is giving them the motivation to continue, it will work itself out. It always does. It's human nature. It's learning. It's the way things go. But especially with modern society and social media and watching the highlights, we get so lost in, man, why didn't this happen, or why didn't that happen, or this or that? If you can teach young kids to just stay dialed into that process, that's 90% of the battle, I think. And to take the highs and the lows, there's the higher the highs, the lower the lows type of a thing, and just teach them to kind of ride, mitigate the emotional response, ride the roller coaster, and it always works out. It just does. If you have that kind of a mindset.
I think output over outcome is something I've said to my teams for years. The outcome, you can't control. The output you can control, and that could be whether you get a barrel or not, or it could be how you respond to when you're going through a slump. Are you leaning in? Are you putting the work in? What is your output level? And that's all you can judge.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And if you guys ever just want to talk hitting for like a full hour, the art of hitting, I'm all about that. So
I would
holler
love
at me.
to.
I know nothing
It's
about
all
it.
mindset.
Kyle, I think you would really enjoy it though, because what Chris just said is right. Like, there's some must-have mechanical things, but if it's all here, if your approach isn't right, I mean, think of major leaguer swings are as close to perfect as you can get, and they still fail a lot. So
Well, but on that same thought too, is if I look at 25 major league hitters, they have certain shared elements of their swing mechanically.
absolutely,
But there are 25 different swings too, to be honest with you. But so which one's right, which one's wrong? They all have one thing in common, and it's their mindset. It's the mentality. It's their approach to that at bat. That's why they're having the success.
Yeah.
So,
And that's key
I'd love
too.
to do a show on
Approach to-
hitting.
The key there too is the approach to that at bat. They're not worried about future at bats. They're not worried about past at bats. They take the one that's right there in front of them. 100% focus on the process, hopefully, and you repeat that over time. And I personally believe you can become great at anything if you just stick with it.
Well, and then
Yeah,
it's not
guys,
even
that was,
about it's not even necessarily about always hitting the ball hard. It's doing your job. That's the next phase, right? doing your job. I mean, a guy on second base, nobody out, and I hit a ground ball to second baseman and throw me out at first. I mean, that was pretty good at bat. Good job. It's exactly what I needed you to do, right?
All right, guys, let's go ahead and wrap up. I thought that was excellent. Corey, thank you so much for your time. Scott, it was great to have you back again. Always enjoy your insight. Chris, Coach Dylan Gautreaux, y'all as well. Everybody here's coaches, by the way, not necessarily myself, but I don't know why Dylan's is the only one that says coach. Maybe some way I have it set up on my end. But anyway, thank you again so much. I appreciate your time and your insight. I thought it was wonderful. I always take a whole bunch of notes over here. So it was a good time. Anything anybody would like to add before we go?
Thank you guys very much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it.